We're going to get started. This is our first Cord Connect series. My name is Fiona Gallahue. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce Dr. Jeffrey Riddell. Dr. Jeffrey Riddell is the Assistant Professor in Clinical Emergency Medicine at University of Southern California Keck School of Medicine, where he teaches in the residency program at LA County and USC Medical Center. He completed his Medical Education Research Fellowship at the University of Washington, which is where I am, and I had the pleasure of being co-faculty. While he was a Medical Education Research faculty member here, he co-created our social media curriculum and revamped everything about how we approach social media in our residency. He also, after only 1 year of fellowship, was awarded the Outstanding Faculty Educator Award at the University of Washington, which is pretty unusual for a first-year fellow. So I hope that tells you how much we respect Dr. Riddell and are very happy to have him here. Also, he completed his emergency medicine residency at UCSF Fresno and was a medical school, Keck School of Medicine at the University of Southern California. He spends his time teaching, tweeting, researching, blogging, all about digital media and active learning in medical education. It is my absolute privilege and pleasure to introduce Dr. Jeffrey Riddell.
Well, thanks, Fiona. That was very kind. I can't hear the applause from the audience, but no, totally. Honored to be here and excited to be here with the Cord group for the first of this series. Should be fun. We're going to dig into establishing your online professional identity today and talk through what that means and why. A couple objectives, if I can figure out. Yeah, there we go. So here's where we're going. We're going to talk about the importance of your digital footprint so you can recognize why that matters. Then we're going to kind of move to evaluating what you currently look like online and what your current online professional identity is. And then in the last part, we're going to apply strategies to manage that. We'll go through practical ways to take care of this, from super easy stuff to really difficult stuff. So I want to tell the story of how I got interested in this. And this guy on the right here was one of my college roommates, and he's been bugging me for years. He's like, oh, you got to look at your digital footprint and you got to know what you look like online. And I blew him off for many years because I didn't really care. I was a resident early in residency, and kind of toward the end of residency, I was like, maybe this guy has something to it. So I read this book here on the other side called Platform by Michael Hyatt. And that talks about the importance of this as well. And then the third thing that happened is I met this guy here, Sasha Strauss, and I got to interview him. And he runs this brand consulting firm in Los Angeles, and he teaches at USC and UCLA in their business schools. And he works with big companies, nonprofits, religions, all sorts of groups and people at figuring out how to tell their story online. And he convinced me that we really get to decide to whom we matter and why in the online space, and that we can control how we're perceived by those who we meet and those who we haven't yet meet who are looking us up. And after talking with Sasha, I was convinced, okay, this makes sense. This is something I want to take control of. I want to do that. I want control of my own professional online identity, and I don't want to leave it to chance. And so at that, I dug into this, and that's kind of where I got interested in this. So why should you care? Like, why does this really matter? And I think that's probably the most important question to address. And I'm going to give you a handful of reasons. Reason number one, fear. People are searching for you online. People are Googling you. Whether you like it or not, people look you up. When they want to know about you or about something you're doing, something you stand for, about your research, about where you worked, your department, what you've published, they Google you. And I know this for two reasons. Here's a little bit of evidence. Reason number one, this slide shows the views to my little personal website that I made like a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. I don't show this to show like, ooh, look, I'm popular. It's actually quite sad. But the point is, there's been 1,500 views of this little jeffriddell.com page that I made a couple years ago. And if you look at this weekly breakdown here, which is each of these bars in the graphs, you're seeing like 5 to 10, maybe 15 people are looking me up. And they're trying to find me online, and they're finding this little website that I made that comes up as the first hit on my Google search. So this isn't like a huge number as far as websites go. This is actually a very small number. I just show this to show you that people are using the internet to find out who you are. The second way I know this is from personal experience. I know probably a lot of you are program faculty, participate in screening applications, interviews for residencies, med schools, etc. And just based on personal experience, I can say that I have advocated to move people up or down, to cross names off of the rank list based on things that I have found online about certain applicants when I have looked them up. And that includes moving people out of a matchable range just because of things that I've found online about them. The third way I know that people are looking you up online comes after I applied for a grant. So I applied for a grant from one of our national organizations. You can guess which one based on this slide. And I turned my application in on a Friday afternoon about 5 o'clock. The following Monday morning about 10 a.m., guess who followed me on Twitter? That organization that I had applied to that grant for. And so that was a real wake-up call for me. That was like a, whoa, the grant funders are online stalking me. I need to pay attention to what's going on. I need to look at my online presence and make sure that I have my stuff together when they come looking for me. The fourth way is this is Greg Hendy. Dr. Hendy was my former chair, and he's now the chair in emergency medicine at UCLA. And I asked him straight up, I said, you hire a lot of faculty. Do you Google search them? What do you do? And he said specifically that it's professional malpractice not to look these people up. And it's part of the normal due diligence in his normal employment process. So as he's looking at faculty and fellows, he absolutely is searching for them online. And he says that things can get missed in a real interview. People can look nice for 1 hour, but there might be more to them online. And then I think the last reason why I know people are searching for us, this is a study from JAMA in 2014, just from patients. Patients are also looking us up, probably less in the specialty of emergency medicine, but for physicians in general, patients say that 59% use rating sites, and they say are somewhat or very important, and that 37% of patients have used an online review to avoid a physician with bad ratings. So people are looking for us, and that's kind of the first point that we need to care about, is because increasingly in this internet-based world, technology-based world, the way that humans communicate has changed, and the way that people's reputations and work is put forward into our community is largely in the online space. So the first thing I want you to do is pull out your cell phone, because you should have it right next to you. If you don't, I guess you could minimize the window of the webinar that we're talking, on which we're talking, but it'd be super easy just to keep that window up, pull up your cell phone, and I want you to Google yourself. So put in, I have here first name, last name, so I'm gonna put in Jeff, comma, Riddell, actually no comma, just Jeff Riddell space MD. I'm putting that in my phone. And then I want you to scroll through the hits on the first page of Google. Don't need to go to the second page, just look at what comes up. Hit number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, this is getting weird. And think about who's controlling this content. Who is in charge of this story that's being told about you on Google? Is it you? Is it Healthgrades? Is it vitals.com? Is it Doximity? Is it some newspaper? Someone who disagrees with your research? You can click a few links if you want. Don't go too deep down the rabbit hole. The point of the exercise is really to see, what does your digital footprint look like right now? What is your current online presence? And I think that the first page of Google is a good representation of that. It's not often that people will go onto the second page. And are the things that show up on there things that you want to show up? Is it the story that you would want told of you? Is it what you would want colleagues to find when they search for you? Or is it a haphazard jumble that doesn't really represent the things that you represent well? So, I don't know, Tina, is there a chance for anyone on the audio, anyone on the call to weigh in, or is their audio muted?
Tina, do you know?
Their audio is muted.
Okay, we'll keep the minions muted. No, no, that's okay. It's not the safest classroom with which to share, but it can be helpful to talk through with other people what you found and some of the things that were helpful or not helpful. But that's okay. So what I want to do is move on to another little exercise here, and our colleague Laura Welsh has so generously allowed us to Google her. She is a senior fellow in the Education Research Fellowship at the University of Washington. She trained at Harvard, was a chief resident there. She was the editor of a huge book that goes to all residents through EMRA. As a resident, she did all of these things. She's quite an accomplished physician and scholar with an incredible pedigree. And we're gonna look her up real fast. And let's see here. Okay, can you guys see that?
I can see it, yes.
Yeah, okay, great. So we're scrolling through what comes up when Dr. Welsh gets Google. And this is just an example. I just asked her last night if we could do this. So the first two hits, great. They're UW Emergency Medicine, professional bios. They tell her story. Super cool. I know who she is. She's not a creepster. That makes sense. But here on this first page, then we get this like, what is Doximity? What is this? What is Medstro? Who are these companies that control her? Is she really a chief resident at Harvard? Or is she faculty now? Then we get in some different providers at a clinic. Her obituary, uh-oh. She's not dead. I think it's someone else with the same name. There's a list of residents from her residency. So, you know, it actually takes, get this, to the second page of Google. Oh, by the way, here's the book that she wrote on Amazon.com that we don't really find out about until the second page. So I'm not here to critique Laura, bless her soul, for letting us show this, but she is really an outstanding physician and scholar, and she doesn't quite get credit for the work that she does because it's hard to schlep through all that stuff that comes up on Google to find her. Next, I want to show you something. So this is me. We can look at me really fast. Yay, who wants to see that? Oh, thank you. I think it's another example. Let's put this Jeff Riddell, MD. Okay, so here's what comes up on mine because I've kind of spent a bunch of time on this. This is like the first web page I made. And here's my Twitter that has my info. Here's my author profile at one of our blogs in our specialty. Here's my LinkedIn. And then health grades sticks in there, number 5. Then my Google Scholar citations, so my research. Hello, am I muted? Can anyone hear me?
I think you were muted for a brief period of time, but I can hear you now.
Okay. All right, I'm back. Anyway, so here's one thing I want to show you. I'm going to click on this health grades here. If you guys have heard of health grades, it's one of those rating sites that we have no control over. However, just to show you about it, I have one rating here. It's a 5-star rating. Look at that. And it's from, get this, Jeremy Salzberg in Fresno, California. Dr. Riddell was the smartest and most competent doctor I've ever had. He was teaching a med student and a resident, yet he was able to focus on me and made me feel very comfortable. His touch was reassuring, not creepy like some doctors. So that's the only review I have on this site that's on the first page of my Google, and it's actually a fake review that I wrote just to prove the point that anyone can go on and write anything. And I'm not advocating we go on all these sites and spend forever putting fake reviews up. But inevitably, when someone gets mad at you or something gets posted that you know, maybe someone disagrees with the not getting a refill of their opioids, they do have outlets and they can go on these spaces and say whatever they want. And so my hope, and hopefully through this session, we can talk about ways to kind of take control of that, ways to, I would say, tell our story such that when the world goes to search for us, they find exactly what we want them to find. They find what we have specially curated for them, such that you don't want the world to make up the story of you. You want to craft the story so that when they hear your name, they think about the things you want them to think about, that you serve up this delicious smorgasbord of who you are and why you matter. And so we have the ability to define ourselves. We can create a permanent record online of what we think matters, and we can do that in ways that allow for future opportunities, that make it easy when you meet someone to connect with them. You can just point them to a web page or a social media app. It gives colleagues and patients and collaborators an accurate view of who you are and what you do. Also, I would argue, gives grant funders and future employers that same information. It allows you to be discovered randomly by a newspaper reporter who might interview, or a colleague who might want to collaborate on a new research project. I think most importantly, it allows the things that you care about to have reach, to have legs, to go further, faster. And so we're going to talk about some practical ways that we can tell our stories online first. But I think it's important, before we do that, to talk about some of the detractors. And there are some. When the topic of, quote, personal branding comes up, who think it's just lame self-promotion. And so we were in a conversation, I think this is maybe a year or two, in 2015, with some Canadian and American educators talking about this on Twitter. And the good Dr. Weingart kind of summarized some people's thoughts about this, saying any branding aside from putting out great stuff is debaggery. And I think there's a, despite the language, there's a connotation that putting yourself out there in a quote unquote branding way is kind of a sleazy thing to do. And so I was interested, and I searched, and Dr. Weingart actually has a very well developed brand. He has a complete personal website. He's a very recognizable logo. Everyone knows his personal brand. He is a critical care expert. And so I think he uses those platforms that he has carefully developed in order to get his message out. And so I think there's a little hesitancy that some of us have, feeling like, this feels like bragging or boasting. It feels vain or self-serving to kind of put yourself out there on the interwebs. And I think Sheryl Sandberg, who's the COO of Facebook, really kind of put language to this that I thought is really helpful. And she talks about, if you're just doing this to develop your personal brand and make yourself float and sound great, it's really just empty and self-serving. But if you're doing it because there's something that you want to see changed in the world, then there's value and depth and integrity in that. And so however you want to slice it, if you want to move something forward, if you believe in wellness, active learning, giving better sign-outs, giving better feedback, teaching procedures, enhancing curriculum with technology, whatever it is that you care about, in order to move that thing forward, you need to get your message out there. You need a platform with which to spread that message for change. And so I would argue that your thing, whatever that thing is, will go further, faster, and with more influence if you have a consistent online identity that encompasses that. So you need speaking gigs to talk about the thing that you care about. You need people to read your research, not just publish it, but people actually have to read it so that they can make the changes that you want them to make based on that research. And so, like I said, having that consistent, thoughtful, established professional online identity is important to really helping make that happen. Okay, so that was a bunch. If there's any questions, like Fiona said, feel free to chat them in the thing. We can answer them as we go. Fiona can break in with questions. But that's my big argument for what we're talking about and why it matters. And now to the meat of the practical part, let's get into what you can do. So if you buy my argument and you think, okay, maybe this is important, maybe I should look at this stuff, what can I do to get there? And so if you consider the interwebs a blank canvas that can be painted by anyone with anything, how are we going to tell that story? And so there are a whole bunch of different apps and different platforms and different ways to do that. And so we're going to kind of start easy and go to difficult. And these are just suggestions for what you can do. These aren't replacement for doing good work. You can't magically snap your fingers after sitting on the couch for 5 years and create a beautiful online identity that says you're an expert in education, whatever. You have to be doing good work. You have to be working hard and creating value for our community. And I think most of you that are on this are doing that, and you are passionate about something, and you're doing good work, and you are representing your residency or your faculty well. And if that's the case, then these are strategies that you can use to take that message further, faster. So the first one, look, I used Dr. Gallagher as an example. The first one is just to update your institutional profile. Wherever you work, resident, fellow, faculty, there's a page with your picture and your name on it. And you can help tell the story of what's important to you on that page so that when people look for it, it's a professional picture, it's got your title, it's got what you care about on there. That's a really easy one, low-hanging fruit. You can email whatever administrator takes care of that at your institution. A next easy one is LinkedIn. I don't really like LinkedIn. I never go on it. However, I set up a page that has a picture of me and some of my information. And it's amazing how many people have, reached out or connected with me through LinkedIn, even though I never really use it. So here's an example of one of the chief residents at UCSF Fresno program. Professional picture, has his education, some of the stuff he's done, and a couple connections. Here's one of Dr. Hendy, the aforementioned chair at UCLA in emergency medicine. Again, it's just a professional page, has some of your info on there. Here's one of Dr. Berg, one of my former faculty, who does a bunch of interesting things in the Netherlands and has a unique career, and he kind of lists some of that stuff. And so when you look and search for him and find him, you see these interesting things that he's into. So low-hanging fruit, I wouldn't spend too much time on LinkedIn, but if you talk to any of these guys in the business world, LinkedIn is now the online resume. And it's extremely important in the business world. And it's just one more easy way. It's going to come up in that front page of the Google search as long as you just fill out a simple profile. You don't have to make friends with everybody. Okay, the third one is the Twitters. And Twitter is controversial. Some people hate it, some people love it. I use it a lot, and I found it to be great in connecting with colleagues from around the world. But in terms of establishing an online professional identity, Twitter's pretty easy. Because Google likes to put Twitter in that first 1, 2, or 3 hits when you have a Twitter account. And so you can just sign up for it, put a picture in the corner, and write a little bio in that little section under the picture there that talks about what you do. So here's an example from a colleague, Jess Mason. You'll notice in her Twitter bio, I see 3 different podcasts, or at least on her initial Twitter page, there's 3 different podcasting mics. She's a MRAP person. She talks about the things she's involved in. And Jess actually doesn't use Twitter a ton, but she has a very professional Twitter account that will show up in the top of her list that you can look at in 5 seconds and get a sense of who she is and what she cares about within our specialty. Here's an example of my Twitter page. It's got that same picture of me that you'll see all over the place in black and white. And then it just talks about the things that I do and that I care about. And then one important point, let me see if I can switch to the highlighter. One important thing here is this pinned tweet. If you can see that there, if you do start a Twitter page, you can literally post 1 or 2 tweets or none, but this is something that can show up in that front page of the Google search. And if you do pin a tweet, you can make something that is representative of your message or what you care about or what you like to talk about or something that you want changed in that pinned tweet. And so mine happens to be about technology and faculty and that kind of thing. And that will always stay at the top of the screen. So whenever someone comes to find you, regardless of what you've tweeted recently, that pinned tweet will stay at the top. And it's very commonly the first thing that people look at when they actually click on that Twitter link. And let me get off the highlighter. Here's the Twitter page. Oh, I have to clear it. Tina, you want to remind me how to clear it? Oh, I know. Erase all drawings. Okay. So this is Mike Gisandi, who's a vice chair of education in emergency medicine at Stanford, and this is his Twitter page. Again, just a professional page. He's talking about what's going on in his department, and it's very easy to set up and do. Here's the core Twitter, another plug for Twitter. It's another way that faculty members and colleagues, educators around the country can kind of know what's going on in our education community practice. And so here's a tweet from Cord. It talks about Dr. Doty talking about something very important to him in suicide prevention at Stanford with Dr. Fix and Dr. Gisandi. And so just by being on Twitter, I was like, oh, interesting. Now I kind of know what Doty is talking about at the Grand Rounds at Stanford, even though I'm not there, but I know those two and I feel like I get a sense of that connection. Another way to go is the Facebook. Most people have Facebook already. I actually don't, and this is a good time for me to chime in and say I'm not a social media apologist. I haven't been a social media fanatic since I was 5 years old. I've actually never had a personal Facebook account, so I don't have one of those, though I do have a bunch of other things going on. This just gives you a sense that I'm not really, hey, social media for everything, everybody, all the time. Whatever is right for you, any of these things we talk about, some or none, just bear that in mind. But many people do have professional Facebook pages. Here's one from our Surgeon General, Dr. Jerome Adams, talking about professional picture of him with some, looks like high-ranking people. And then if you scroll through his feed, which I did earlier, it's about all the good stuff that they're doing to try to promote health. Here's another one of a faculty member that I had in residency, Dr. Benjamin, a wonderful human being. It's a little bit more personal and family, but you'll notice it's still professional. There's nothing that is grossly unprofessional on there. And this is kind of a dicey topic to get into. It's better to have as a discussion, but if you do choose to post controversial things on your personal Facebook, that is your decision. Just make sure that you know that people will see that, or people can see that, and it may affect their view of you as a professional. Make sure you understand your privacy settings on Facebook. If you're saying things that might upset a whole lot of people, you might want to think twice about how that gets disseminated to the world. And if it's still something that you want to do, just make sure that you know that people can and will find it. Okay, another easy thing to do to help establish this online footprint is to do a blog post. And these are two blogs I just picked that I thought off the top of my head that are often open to guest posts and are a great place for residents and faculty to kind of team up on a blog post. And when you do that, that hit will come at the top of your page. So if you're really about wellness and you do a blog post about wellness on one of these two sites or many of the other great emergency medicine blogs, that will also come up in that Twitter list. And so when people Google you, they'll be like, oh, they wrote this thing about wellness. So here's an example of one that I did with one of the residents at the University of Washington. It takes some work. Like I said before, you can't just sit on your couch. But this post shows up on my front page of Twitter because lots of people see it. I'm not necessarily a tox silent killers expert, but I do put myself out there as an educator, and working with residents on these kind of things is part of what we do. Here's a post from our colleague up at Mount Sinai, Dr. Shah, and here's a post of his with Dr. Schnapp on Allium. And when you do that, you'll notice this is the author page. If you see at the top of the screen there, this website, it's actually the author page for Dr. Shah. And so all of his blog posts at this site will come under this page, and you can see kind of everything that he's been blogging about. Literally, if you do one of these, you'll get an author bio page, and then again, that'll show up on your Google, and it's one more professional thing that might move down some of those health grade doximity things that we're not so happy about. Here is the Feminum, FEMINEM.org speakers page. This is another great resource for posting who you are, what you do. This is actually their speakers bureau, so they have an incredible resource webpage here that has, like if you look up here, it's Feminum and speakers is the key there. And they have all these wonderful female speakers from our specialty with what they speak about, and that's another place that you can easily do. A quick reminder, I have put all of these resources with a link to the webpage on a document that Tina, our organizer, will help email or send to any and all of you afterwards. So you don't have to write all this stuff down, but just think about them. And then when you get that document, you can say, no, 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 yes, I want to do that. Yes, I want to do that. Okay, let's remove the ink and move on. Okay, for those that do research, there's a couple options for putting your work out there to get kind of a better dissemination than just through the journal. One of them is ResearchGate. This is the ResearchGate profile of one of our colleagues up in Saskatchewan, Dr. Toma. He's quite a prolific researcher, but it's called ResearchGate. You can connect with other researchers. You put your picture up there, and then it posts, like every time you publish something, it'll pull it in there. And so this is another one of those things that comes up where you can see all of someone's scholarship. Here's an example of Google Scholar. This is really easy to set up as well if you have a Google account, which most people do. Here's mine. I didn't even know about it. And then I was like, oh, Google Scholar. And I basically just put in my institution, and it pulled in all of my publications. And that's a super easy link that you can share with people if they want to see everything you published. It's also something that comes up on that front page of Google. It makes me look like I'm a big researcher when really I'm just getting started. Google Plus is another option. I don't do this, but some people do. This is Dr. Tanner Granowski, who's a colleague from Academic Life in EM, and he was a resident. He might have graduated, I don't remember, but this is his Google Plus site. Just kind of shows what he's interested in, wilderness medicine, some pictures of that. It's one more thing you can do. I don't. This is YouTube. This is ZDog MD. If any of you guys, you probably all have heard of ZDog. He's kind of a big deal, but he has made a following for himself, rapping about medicine and kind of spreading health messages through YouTube, which is a possibility. This is also the YouTube page of Dr. Al Sacchetti back in New York. and he has a bunch of procedural videos. And so, I mean, if you look at this, there's like 12,000 views of some of these procedures that he's put up here on these videos. And that's another way to spread your message. Instagram, it has become much more popular, I think, amongst our learners than Twitter. And I don't think we've yet figured out how to teach super well with Instagram. However, it's pretty easy to create an Instagram profile and make it something that's professional. It's easy to find. This is called Dr. DC Online. He has 100, or she, I don't know, has 100,000 followers, which is a lot. And I don't know how that happened, but that's a significant amount of influence on Instagram. This is something called the Aftermath Project that has kind of photos of what trauma is like at a level 1 center, and kind of tries to tell the story of our job through the lens of photography at a trauma center. These are all, again, Instagram ways of getting that message out there. So now we're starting to get to the harder stuff, and this is a website. This is the Metric Study website. This represents a research website, and so this is basically the front page of a website that we're using to try to enroll a whole bunch of research subjects across the world in some of our research about podcasting. And so here's another way. It's got our pictures and our research agenda and those kind of things. And it's another way of getting that message out there. This was built on WordPress, which is, again, the link will be in the paper I send out. It's an easy platform that you can go on and create a website in a very short amount of time. But it's one more way to put that out there. This is another interesting thing that has come along in the last handful of years. It's called Slideshare, slideshare.net, and this has been bought by LinkedIn. So they're kind of teamed up now. But Slideshare is a great way to basically, after you give some kind of talk that is important to you and that you think matters, you can post the slides of it on Slideshare, and then you can share that through social media. So this happens to be a lecture that Michelle Lin gave at AACEM in 2017 that she tweeted, and she shared the slides, and they were fascinating. And they talk a lot about revolutionizing education, and that's interesting to a lot of us. And that's one more way that Michelle can spread that message. Even though she just gave that lecture to probably 100 shares, she spread that through social media so that all of us could see what she's talking about. And so as long as your slides are copyright free, that's a great way to say, look, here's what I'm talking about, here's what I care about, here's what I think matters, and here's some slides that I think you should think about. Okay, almost toward the end. This is probably the last thing I'm going to talk about, and this is what's called a personal or professional landing page. This is something that my college buddy, the marketing strategist, kept telling me I should do, and I put off. But I have actually done it now, and what it is it's an individual web page. This one is richardwinters.com, and this is about Dr. Rick Winters, who's a wonderful colleague at Mayo. And he has a background in physician coaching. He has an MBA, I think, with a focus on coaching. And so he does physician professional development. And so he's got a cool website that just talks about what he does. And so it's an easy way for people that hear about him to find more about him. This guy here is Dr. JP, who I don't know the guy, but he's a board certified emergency physician practicing for 15 years. And he cares about health and lifestyle. And so he has this whole kind of website that talks about his approach to health and lifestyle, and that's what matters to him, and that's what he's putting out there. This is a more academic one, and this is Jonathan Sherbinow's personal landing page, jshirbineau.com. And front page here just talks about what he does. He's a physician, a team leader, he's a clinician educator, he's an associate professor, he's actually a dean now as well, blogger, podcaster, innovator. And then there's links to his publications, to his CV, to his bio. Again, when you Google Dr. Sherbinow, this is the first thing that will show up, and it will be a clear way that he can control the message about him so that whoever goes to look for him will see this and think, oh, that's an interesting guy, I want to collaborate with him, or I want to change what I'm doing based on what he said. And finally, this is my weak attempt at doing the same thing. This was created on WordPress.com. It takes a couple hours to do. It has a picture and then a little bio at the bottom with links to my Twitter, my Google Scholar account, and all those things. That's an important point to make. When you link, Google really likes it when you link between platforms. So if your Twitter links to your website and links to your Facebook and your LinkedIn, they really like that because the Google algorithm trusts that a lot more than random one-off kind of web pages. So if you have things that link to each other, those will automatically rise to the top of that Google search algorithm. Okay, so that's a lot of stuff. I don't know if there are audience members who have ideas or other platforms that I didn't mention, or even questions right now that might be helpful for me to answer. The silence is deafening.
Jeff, that's amazing. I have to say, every time, you know, you make me really think about how I do or don't actually get lazy about kind of curating my digital presence. And I have to say, after I first heard you talk, I actually went to my LinkedIn page and tried to do something.
Yes, so, yeah.
Slow steps, baby steps. Now, for anybody in the audience, if you have any questions for Jeff, I think you're unmuted, or you can put in the chat any questions that you might have for him. This is actually a really big topic. I think many people, this is something that's kind of hard to imagine, curating your online presence.
Almost, yeah.
Can you repeat that?
I heard something.
I heard somebody say something.
Somebody's out there.
Fiona, I have a question from Laura. It says, how do you separate the personal and professional on some of these websites, namely Facebook?
Yeah, so you heard that question that went on okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So that's a really tough question. And there's no one clear, easy answer. And I think I haven't researched this deeply in a rigorous way, but in talking with a lot of people, I think the answer depends a lot on what you use your Facebook for and what generation you're in. I think for younger people, there's much more of a blending between personal and professional lives. There's not the kind of 5 o'clock I go home and I'm with kids and family as much in the kind of current resident fellow junior faculty generation. And my suspicion is in the older faculty, there's more of a, or at least a desire for a more clear separation, that I want my Facebook to be about my family and kids and life, and I want my work stuff to be about work stuff. And so I would say it's a personal decision. Sasha, the branding guru that I mentioned before, I asked that question of him, and he said that for our generation, being younger, there are no longer boundaries between work and professional. It's just us, and that we don't expect people to be perfect. We expect people to go out and have a good time. We expect people to go to restaurants and care about food, and we expect people to send pictures from sporting events and all those kind of things. And so he argues that it doesn't really matter because you're all one person and all of it goes into who you are, as long as you're being thoughtful and you know, obeying the law and those kind of things. Others would argue, no, I want my privacy settings up. I don't want a patient to ever find me. Specifically, I spoke with one OBGYN about this. She asked me a similar question, and you know, she does family planning and you know, Planned Parenthood, and she said I have to hide everything because of the danger of patients finding me online. So it's kind of a personal decision that has to do with your level of comfort and privacy. Also, what you post on Facebook about and what you talk about there and what your purpose in using that is, and then also the purpose of your message or mission within education. And if there's a lot of overlap, then it's really cool. Like some people's personal Facebooks talk a lot about wellness and all the things that they're doing with their residencies to try to work on that. And it's a real natural melding of personal and professional in the areas of wellness. Whereas my wife and kids, you know, couldn't care less about my research. So, yeah, tough question, but a good question, Laura. Thank you.
And I mean, I think that's a, you know, I personally, I have a Facebook. I actually put personal things on my Facebook. It is definitely a blended space. And I think, you know, but I've also had people who've been stalked by patients. And I think that if, you know, you have to be very careful in certain scenarios. If you find yourself in a space where you feel you're unsafe, that might need to be, those boundaries might need to be more set.
Yeah, and we just, of course, to plug my own research, seriously, we just published a thing in JGME, like a mini qualitative analysis of an online discussion about residents and attendings friending each other on Facebook, and we kind of dug deep into the blurring of those personal and professional boundaries, and it's really a nuanced, it's a hard one to tackle.
I liked what you said though in that in the JGME, one of the things that they came out with was the suggestion that faculty don't friend residents, but residents can friend faculty because there is a hierarchy. And I thought that was a really thoughtful way to approach that. Any other questions?
Yes, there was a question, and it said how to include audio with Slideshare. I'm not sure if that was referencing the actual presentation or if Slideshare is a system.
Yeah, no. So Slideshare is one of the websites that you can use to kind of get your stuff out there. That's wonderful because you can kind of tweet links to it and people can see the slides of the presentation you just gave. And so what you can do is record the audio and upload it upload it to a server, and then when you publish a Slideshare, it'll like accept both the PowerPoint. So what you do then in PowerPoint, sorry, you record the presentation. Then in PowerPoint, you on your own computer, like through Audacity or whatever, you link up the audio with the actual PowerPoint. So then when you upload it, it can all go together. It's a complicated topic. I can send a link. I'll put the link in the chat, Tina, if you want to share this with the. If you want to share that link with the world, there's a link in the chat with how to do it. I've never done it. Most people don't, but you definitely could. It's just another way to get your message out there.
Okay, I just shared it with everybody.
Cool, thanks.
Does anyone have any more questions?
Yeah. Okay, if not, I can just quickly brief review. We talked about the importance of the digital footprint. Remember, people are searching for us and we get a chance to tell the story. And I think we should do our best to take advantage of that. And then we hopefully evaluate our own personal online identity. We looked at mine at least, and Laura's and some others to say, hey, where am I doing well with this? How could I change this based on my needs and my wants? Very personal thing, but something to think about. And then lastly, we just went through a whole bunch of strategies to manage that professional online identity. Some work for some, others work for others. We will send out a file with links to all of the sites that we mentioned, so you can have that. You don't have to go searching for them. And yeah, that's what I got.
I do want to ask you one question. What is the most common mistake you see people make when they're first starting out trying to create an online person?
That's a great question. I think the first one that comes to mind is like joining a whole ton of things all at once and like, oh, I'm going to do everything, and then quickly saying this is stupid, I'm not doing any of it. And that's okay. We don't need to do and maintain everything, but picking a couple things that you can use meaningfully, I think would be helpful to start. You don't need to jump in with like your personal web page if you don't even really have your name out there on Facebook or Twitter or your department's thing. I would say the other issue is we often forget and don't update, and so things are 3 or 4 or 5 years old now, and it shows you as a junior resident like two cities ago, and so it doesn't really reflect who you are and what you're doing. And I think that's another downfall. And I think the third would be just not caring and not doing anything because it hasn't yet nipped you. It hasn't yet become a problem. You've gotten by fine without it. And so to those people who don't care at all because of that, I think that's another potential pitfall that they might not be taking full advantage of the technology.
That's great. That's great advice.
There are a few more questions.
Great.
Let's see, it says, thoughts on leveraging promotion?
Thoughts on leveraging promotion? Like academic promotion, like from assistant to associate kind of thing, maybe?
I'm not
or like
sure.
promoting an
We'll
event promotion? I'm going to guess promotion academically with this crowd. You know what? Not to plug Cord, but we're actually doing a workshop on this coming up in April, I believe, at Cord. So that's a tough question as well. I think it really depends locally. I have found that having a professional, consistent online identity has helped me for promotion without the promotion or chair or committee knowing that it's helping me, because it's led to opportunities to collaborate on research with people who said, oh, Jeff studies those things. I'm doing that study. Let's work together. Or, oh, you know, Michelle talks about this. I'd like her to come give that lecture at my shop. And so the opportunities to kind of push the message, push the thing that you care about come, and those things secondarily lead to, hopefully, to promotion. The actual process of, oh, I have a lot of Twitter followers and influence in social media is a little bit of a different issue. In terms of, you know, people that have very influential podcasts that have a really big name, so to speak, in the educator world through social media, now going through promotion and challenging kind of the traditional academic structure of promotion is kind of beyond the scope of this. And we will be talking about it at CORD with Daniel Cabrera, who just published a paper with his group at Mayo about some guidelines and standards and how to use altmetrics and various other proxy kind of signifiers of influence. But I don't think that yet just having a nice Twitter and having a good website and that kind of stuff matters, except that it helps you to advance the things that you care about, which ultimately helps you to get promoted.
I think one of the things that Dr. Riddell mentioned initially was that it really does influence your perceptions of people, and you know, sometimes those open the doors to opportunities. I would say most institutions at this point probably don't look at how influential you are on Twitter, but your social profile really does, you know, it's that first impression. And anything that you can do to create opportunities for yourself, to create a favorable impression of yourself, does benefit you long term.
100% agree. Were there more questions?
And you also have, no, but you do have a shout out. It says, great job, Jeff. Go UCSF Fresno. That was from Fred Wu.
Oh, that's awesome. Fred, thank you for joining us. Fred is the president of SEMPA. He's one of the leaders of the physician assistants in our country. And so it's wonderful to have you here. Hopefully you can share this with your PAs as well.
Great. What?
Other than that, there are no more questions. If anybody else has some questions, we're obviously very happy to answer them.
All right, I think we're going to wrap it up. This will be posted on the CORD website. I do want to make sure everyone knows that October 26th is the next CORD Connect series. We're going to have Dr. Michael Gisanti from Stanford, who you saw on this lecture, as well as Dr. Jeremy Branzetti, the program director for New York University, will be presenting on branding your residency program.
Cool.
All right, and thank you so much, Dr. Riddell. I very much appreciate you being on this series. I think it was a wonderful talk.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody. Connect with me again on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever. Great to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.